going on, guys? Cam here from Casey Turbos. I'm with my good friend Jared from Hill and Matt from Gearhead. They're here to talk to you guys today about Jared's 7.3 cylinder heads. These things are awesome. You've done tons of work.
So we've done 7.3 heads for a long time, and back in the day we used to hand port them, and we tried kind of outsourcing and finding partners for stuff, and we kind of struggled either in quality or delivery. It took forever, and so last year we kind of clean sheet redesigned, and we took a 7.3 head and cut it up into 20 or 30 sections and laser scanned each one and got us good models of where the water jackets are, where constraints are, the push rods, the head bolt holes, etc. Went through and clean sheet redesigned with some new equipment. We were able to get in here and reach areas on the intake ports in particular that we were never able to reach before. It was always kind of impossible to do like a full port cleanup in the past, where we can really control, the contour, and everything of the ports. So real happy. We've got really good flow numbers. And of course, we don't actually race the flow bench. Flow numbers only really tell half the story. There's a lot more that goes into, swirl. We were talking earlier about swirl and combustion efficiency and injection. And we had these on display at PRI. And then also at PRI, we debuted our Jessel rocker system. You can run them on your daily driver, but a lot of the, high horsepower, 1,000 and 1,500 horsepower guys, really needed something stronger than the stock rockers. I've been working on this project for a long time with Jessel. Very tight to package everything in here with the big 7.3 Huey injector. Everything's very, very close, but the guys at Jessel were able to get everything packaged in very well. And so this is a drop-in, bolt-in kit. And of course, it'll work with your factory hydraulic roller lifters, or of course, we have solid roller options available as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to pass it off to Matt here. He's going to ask you some hard-hitting technical questions.
Well, let's talk about airflow for a minute.
Sure.
And why airflow is important. I mean, we can always add more boost, but it really helps if the VE characteristics of the engine, the volumetric efficiency, is actually good without the turbo on it. So once you have a good combination here, you can add more boost to it and actually make more power than just adding the boost with a restrictive, you're having to wheeze type engine. Package.
Engines and air pump, right? It all goes back to the engines and air pump. And, of course, we always want, and of course, our buddies at KC, and more efficient turbos is awesome. And closer boost to back pressure ratios, of course, always good. You go back to, 30 pounds of boost, 30 pounds of back pressure. Well, now we're back to the engines and air pump again. And so, the diesel combustion is so important and differs so much from the gas engine world, where a lot of the combustion, camshaft heads, port stuff, a lot of the information that's out there, of course, comes from the gas engine world, small block, LS, whatever. And that's all cool. But a lot of people forget is that in a diesel engine, there's no fuel in the cylinder until just a few degrees before top dead center. Talk about flow bench numbers, and everyone kind of likes easy numbers to compare. You can also get into trouble by chasing numbers on a flow bench, ruining swirl.
Well, let's talk about swirl for a minute and why it's important. So basically, you want that mixture to hit that airflow, swirl around, mixture motion. There you go. And, it keeps everything mixed. So you have, less smoke, a better, cleaner combustion.
How many holes are in the nozzle on a 7.3 injector? I should know.
I think typically 7.
And so you end up with streams of fuel spraying into a very hot pocket of air. You're going to have pockets of fuel and pockets of air. And if they don't mix, they don't burn. You end up with, the diesel particulate, the actual fuel vapor begins to burn, but if it doesn't completely burn, it turns into a lump of charcoal, basically, that comes out of the tailpipe as particulate.
Right.
Holy smoke! Actually, there's nothing holy about it.
How do we mix that fuel better? In a diesel, swirl is definitely the preferred mixture motion. You have those striations of fuel, and we want to mix that and swirl and blend the, fuel pockets, because in that there will be a stream of fuel, and in the middle of that stream, there's probably very little oxygen. And eventually you get to more and more oxygen on the outside of that stream, and that's where we begin to burn. And then we get into just oxygen. There's not enough fuel to burn. And so somewhere in those very localized areas, there's homogeneous or the more and less mixtures. And of course, this is all happening mind-bogglingly fast, right? Like 40 times a second.
So I guess another way to think about the fuel, let's think of it as a single droplet of fuel. It's a very small droplet, but you would want to have nice oxygen-rich air kind of enveloping that droplet of fuel.
It's like confetti in a tornado. I used to use a toilet analogy. We like the confetti in the tornado analogy better than the toilet analogy.
Yeah, talk about the intake force. Looks like you've really gone in there and a lot of radius work.
So these have from the factory, they have some posts, some divider posts in there. And by removing those, it allows us tool access. This is, they call lollipops, kind of a slang term, carbide cutter, for going in there and cutting the ports in a CNC machine. And so this will be on a spindle that moves around back and forth, and the head will tilt and everything kind of moves around. And so there's just certain areas with those posts in the way that you just simply can't reach. The tool just will not reach, because now we can really control the shape of the port through the entire port to the valve. We were talking earlier about distribution, cylinder distribution, and these aren't as bad as the Cummins heads where you got 6 cylinders in a row. Obviously we're feeding these, kind of into the middle. And this plenum area kind of acts as a reservoir, kind of acts as a capacitor kind of, to help introduce the air. A big component of this is we've got airflow now at much, much higher valve lift. Well, working on camshaft stuff, I know you've done a lot with 7.3 cans over the years too, and it doesn't do any good to have airflow at 700 thousandths valve lift if you only lift the valve 350 thousandths.
Right.
And so there's always a certain area where you want to have a little bit more flow than you have valve lift. But now with some of the rockers, camshaft profiles, solid lifter stuff, we're actually able to open the valve and get the valve and the head in a range where it's actually going to use more of the flow potential that we have.
Right. And we're still limited. I mean, let's talk the true limitations of this platform, the ICP 3000 ICP. Well, let's go back even more basic to that. You've got a set injection window, X degrees of crankshaft rotation.
This is just mechanical limitation.
Mechanical limitations. The window to inject that fuel is twice as wide, time-wise, at 2,000 RPM as it is at 4,000 RPM. So unless you have a fast injector that can actually get the fuel in there in a short amount of time and do something with it, that's your RPM main limiting factor. But you still have to have quality airflow to take advantage of that. So now that we're kind of seeing a technology step along, we're getting better camshaft profiles, better head flow, and and the guys running mechanical can really take advantage of something like this.
So you read online, there's a lot of stuff online, it's like the heads of the restriction, and sure, that's part of it. And a lot of it gets into, it's like the limitations of, think about your computer from the 1990s. These were developed in the 90s, right? You think about your computer from the 1990s, a little different than what we have today, right? And so the whole control systems, mechanics and the hydraulics of everything going on, especially in the HUE injectors, there's just some inherent limitations. And so, sure, the heads are a factor, the cam's a factor, compression ratio, et cetera, all big factors. But a lot of it is just some certain inherent limitations to, a HUE injector. And that's not a knock on anybody. We love the 7.3s, we love our HUE guys, that's all great. Mechanical guys, where they're, they're 6,500. We got guys 6,500, 6,800 RPM in a sled pulling track.
Right.
And it's like, that's where, we can really see, really can see some benefits, especially of some of the, bigger cam, ported heads, et cetera.
It's all a trade-off somewhere.
Yes.
Obviously, for example, I've got a just an older ported set of heads on my truck, and even with the stage 1 and a 230/80 injector, we're seeing 560, 570 at the tires. The stage 1, the stage 2 bumps it up there to almost 600 horsepower, and you're like, wow,
it's unheard
of.
of.
The 7.3, yeah, back in the day, 500 horsepower, 475, 500 horsepower.
You're really doing something.
You're really doing something, and that was with the laggy turbo. So we're actually, 565 with the stage 1, the new KC turbos is just amazing, and better flowing head and the cam profile to match. And it actually takes some of the work out of the turbocharger, because you are flowing more air at lower boost. And you always have a boost to back pressure penalty. So if you can flow the same amount of air, a 5 pounds less boost can actually set it up so that you're paying less
taxes.
Penalty, less taxes on the exhaust side with the turbine, because you're always going to be at 1-to-1 or worse. So if you can drop that boost and set up your compressor and everything, you can actually make more power because you have less turbine restriction. We've now gone to the stage 1 on the same truck, and it's just
Those new Gen 3s, man.
amazing. It's just so much more responsive everywhere. I drove it last night, long trip back to the hotel, and it was, oh, wow, okay, this thing really does drive. This is a tractor engine for the most part. I mean, from the factory, it was never meant to do the RPMs we're talking about. And so we all know that we've, maybe a little bit of rocker arms cracking over the years as we push the limits. And it looks like you worked with Jessel here to make really a nice rocker arm. And you're talking about, maybe down the road do some different ratios, but just in the rigidity, how much power do you think you're picking up just going from the stamped rocker arm to this one?
We designed the cam to have, its load profile based on when we want the valve to open and close. Well, if you have deflection, and even though these aren't necessarily, 9,500 RPM NASCAR engines, especially as you start putting bigger springs in them and bigger cams in them, you do start running into deflection. And so, having more control opening and closing events is very important. When you have your $10, $15, $20,000 engine that you got connecting rods and, pistons and valve springs there, you put all this work into them, and then you've got that thing wound up going down the track or a hot street pass or whatever, and that rocker breaks and the valve doesn't open. Now it becomes a bomb and it blows a rod through the side of the motor. And so now you go, gosh, $3,000 or $4,000 for some rocker arms possibly would have saved that at a certain power level.
It seems like even stock cam, stock everything, you're going to get actually more valve actuation out of a more rigid rocker than something that's soaking up that lift and duration like a sponge, where this is, no, it's, if it's going in here, it's coming out over here.
We only have a certain window, you know, to inject stuff. And as RPM goes up, that window gets smaller and smaller and smaller because the piston spends less and less time where we can actually inject the fuel. Well, the same thing kind of happens with your valve train. So your valve is open for exactly half as much time at 4,000 RPM as it is at 2,000 RPM. So we put a bigger cam in to move the torque curve up to flow more air at higher RPM, blah, blah, blah. When you have these, these are just a stamped steel. And these are literally the cheapest way I think you could possibly engineer to make a rocker arm.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's kudos to the engineers, because they had a specific design goal, and they met it at the lowest price possible.
And they did.
But now that we're pushing the limits, this becomes a limiting factor at some point.
At 400,000s, 450,000s lift, it will actually bind against the pedestal. So there's actually inherent limitations built in there.
Gotcha.
I suspect there's probably trucks running around out there that have an issue that they've kind of gotten away with, but it's kind of a time bomb, you know, where eventually that rocker is going to pop off. Is there a ton of benefit from going from a hydraulic lifter to a solid roller lifter on this kind of application? Typically in a gas engine land, you would start to see those benefits above 6,000 to 7,000 RPM, where you'd pick up a little bit of horsepower by maintaining better control over the valve. What we find is got a plunger and the push rod sits on a pocket of oil. Well, there's a lot of variables that goes into controlling that, but basically it's a marshmallow in between the camshaft and the push rod. And so again, we go back to, here's the cam, we designed the lobe and lift and duration. Of course, everyone likes to compare stage 2, stage 3. Stages don't really mean anything.
Right.
But here's when we want the valve to open. When is it actually opening? So one of the other questions we get all the time talking about solid versus hydraulic is adjusting the valves. And people say, well, I'm gonna have to adjust them every week. You know, I have to adjust it every time I drive it, every month, every pass. And the short answer is no. The adjuster on these does not move. If your valve lash changed, it's because something else moved. And so in a race car setting, there's some advantages doing your regular maintenance. You check your valve lash and you had it set at 10 and now it's 20. Uh-oh, something happened. It's not because the adjuster loosened up. That would be because a cam and lifter's going away. You have a problem somewhere there, push rod's bent, something like that. Ultimately, getting away from this has been it's something we've wanted to do for a long time on the 7.3 platform, and Jessel was absolutely amazing to partner with on it. Again, very, very tight to package all of this in here. These are the stock rockers. You can see some of the 3D printed plastic prototypes. And then, of course, this is a production version, which we just released at PRI, and they're available now.
Down the road, Spintron testing on any of this stuff?
So I've talked to Jessel a lot about this, and of course, you know, at one point or another, Jessel has done rocker arms and on valve train systems for, at one point or another, every cup car team, every top fuel team, every pro stock team. And so they have all the decades of, you know, of data on a Spintron. And so we love to, very timely, very costly. And at the end of the day, Jessel has basically decades of experience and kind of knows, here's the forces involved and the spring pressure and the RPM, kind of here's what it's going to do. And we kind of have this same trend going in the same way. And we go, here's where it's got to live, and here's how we make that work. A lot of the engineering that goes into these, if you look at the actual shape of this, it's skinny and tall at the top, so it gives us a lot of strength vertically. It's fat here at the bottom, but they do that to keep the top, the moment of inertia, the weight of the top of the rocker is going to move the most.
Do you have different spring packages for different customers?
We do. So, you know, the stock springs are fine, but even on a good new set of stock springs, the spring pressure, and we say spring pressure is the closed spring pressure versus the open spring pressure. So we measure it with the valve closed or the valve open. Obviously, as we compress the springs, spring pressure goes up. So you have open pressure, closed pressure. So these are actual retainer. These are actually titanium. So we do a tool steel or titanium retainer for these, going from that big rotator, which is basically has a ball bearing built into it on the top. And so you have that big, heavy ball bearing on top of the spring. That's a lot of weight to be reciprocating at, you know, again, 40, 50 times or way more per second. That's a lot of stuff going on.
It's hard to visualize that, but I've seen some of the Spintron things and just watching even, it's amazingly fast.
And so we can knock over a pound of reciprocating weight by just going to the tool steel, and more than that by going to the titanium.
And then what that gives you is valve control. Basically, you make sure you're not lofting the valve, that it's not coming off of the rocker tip and staying when it's supposed to close, it needs to close. Now, let's talk about seat pressure for when you touched on that. So what people don't realize is you've got your valve area on your exhaust side. You've got exhaust back pressure. So let's just say small turbo, you may be making 35 pounds of boost or so. You may have 50, 60 pounds of drive pressure. Well, that's in PSI. You've got a valve area, that pressure's on top of that valve. And so you take the valve area times the PSI, and you can figure out how much load it is. And you can say, oh, wow, I've only got 50 or 60 pounds of seat pressure. I'm hanging my exhaust valves open.
It's not sealing, and we're burping that valve open slightly.
See that at a certain RPM, and it'll clean up again. Well,
It'll come and go.
because of this, what you're combined. Yes, the harmonics are getting combined with that lack of seat pressure, and the two are adding to each other and making basically a dead spot for the power curve.
And then, so the other deal is, by getting rid of that big heavy rotator, you also get more valve spring for your money too, right? And so that valve spring has to work twice as hard to push that big heavy rotator all the way back up to the top again. So getting rid of that big heavy rotator, you get way less actual reciprocating mass, which is cool. The other thing, talking about the exhaust valve, is you also have all that cylinder pressure. And so what they call the blowdown phase. So you have your power stroke, the piston comes down, explosion, etc. Piston comes down. Before the piston gets all the way to the bottom, the exhaust valve starts to open. And so that's what they call your blowdown phase. And all that cylinder pressure, it's like shaking up a 2-liter and cracking it open. There's all that pressure. We're trying to open that exhaust valve against all of that cylinder pressure. It's very hard. It can be thousands of PSI of cylinder pressure against it. And so usually we see it's exhaust rockers that break, 6.0, 7.3, whatever. Usually it's exhaust rockers that'll break first. And sometimes, a 6-liter, the long exhaust rocker. Well, when that breaks, again, I kind of talked earlier, that kind of becomes a bomb. If we don't get the exhaust out of the cylinder, well, now here comes the next charge and the next injection event. Right. And the next, again, 40, 50, 100 times per second. It happens over and over, and that becomes a bomb real quick.
Well, another scenario for you, since it says typically a hydraulic valve train on the mechanical, you hang that exhaust valve open a little bit. Well, okay, so what's going to happen is you're going to then take that lash up with the hydraulics of the lifter.
Right.
And guess what? You got a piston coming up, kiss the valve.
Right, and you're going down the drag strip at 150 miles an hour, that becomes real dangerous real quick. And so some of this, we can try and push, and it's Jessel's great and we love them. It's not just because we want to sell more Jessel rockers. It kind of becomes a legit safety thing, because when that valve breaks while you're wound up going down the track, you hate to see something that someone's put all their blood, sweat, and tears into, and then watch them have an issue.
Well, especially if you're installing windows in your block going down the track, you're going to oil down the track, you may actually lose your life.
It becomes very, very serious thing. It goes back to, kind of protecting your investment a little bit. That's a part of it. Having more control of the valves and springs, the ability to run a solid roller. And then the other cool thing is, now that we have a much more rigid rocker system and more valve springs and the heads that flow more lift and all that, now we can actually go back and kind of revisit the camshaft, and we get way more aggressive on the camshaft now that we have rockers that'll really keep everything together. Well, even if we want to keep the timing of those events basically the same, we can increase what they call the area under the curve.
This dinosaur platform's getting some new parts finally. 450 horsepower street truck might be a 600 horsepower street truck with everything else working the way it should.
You can really get the performance out of a new one without the $100,000 price tag. We've got calls from customers and demand and racers and daily drivers and everybody, and been working on some of this for a long time now, and we're glad to see it finally come to fruition. Great to be here. Pleasure talking with you about everything.
There you have it, guys. Thank you both for coming out. We're doing a little dealer event. That's why we have two massive meetings of the minds here, 273 and 60 legends, right? You guys have been
doing this almost longer than I've been alive. So this is my dad.
Jared, thank you again for making all these wonderful products. Matt, thank you for keeping us up to speed and having the knowledge to assist Casey Turbos, assist Jared, assist all these other guys in pushing this. So we couldn't have done with that either, you guys. So I just want to say thank you so much.